Hey everyone, it's Jacqueline for Pixie Dust PhD. Disney Vacation Club ownership comes with annual dues. That's just part of the territory. The proposed 2022 annual dues have now been accepted by the board, so they are final, they are posted. We will take a look at those in this video. Stay tuned. We've gone over annual dues in a smattering of different ways on the channel before, but just briefly, what are annual dues? The cost of annual dues is made up of fees that goes towards things like housekeeping, transportation, utilities, taxes, capital reserves, and more. If you want a detailed breakdown of what costs make up annual dues, check out a previous video from the channel. I'll link it in the description below and in the upper right hand corner now. Annual dues are posted to your account sometime in December each year, and they are technically due by January 15th. You can pay these by credit card in a lump sum. You can pay a monthly amount automatically, but you have to have a US bank account to do that, or you can pay them by check. And while officially they are due January 15th, late fees don't begin to accrue until February 15th, so you do have basically a month cushion. Last year, I paid my annual dues via credit card in that lump sum payment. If you want to see that process, I will link the video to that in the description below and in the upper right hand corner now as well. But overall, annual dues are just an inevitable part of Disney Vacation Club ownership, or really any timeshare ownership. They're kind of like HOA fees, but for the timeshare instead of your day-to-day home. I won't go through annual dues line by line, but I did want to do some highlights. If you do want to read the whole table at any time, please feel free to pause the video. Also of note, this is a small caveat that I am rounding annual dues here. Annual dues assessments go out to 4 decimal places. We are used to looking at dollars and cents though as only 2 decimal places, so I have rounded them. These aren't then 100% accurate, but it's pretty dang close. There are 2 other points I want you to know before looking at the values I present in this video. First, I'm not presenting any of these subsidized dues. There is a small subset of Vero Beach and Aulani contracts that do have subsidized dues. However, for simplicity in this video, the values you see for Vero Beach and Aulani are not those subsidized dues contracts. If you are looking at purchasing a new Disney Vacation Club contract at Vero Beach or Aulani, whether that's on the resale market or through Disney, it's pretty unlikely you're going to find one with subsidized dues. And second, I know that some of you only care about the DVC resorts located at Walt Disney World. For completion though, I am showing the other 4 properties, that's Hilton Head, Vero Beach, Aulani, and the Grand Californian out in Disneyland, but I will just shade those a slightly different color to make it easier for you to focus only on the Walt Disney World ones. When sorting the 2022 annual dues by price per point, you'll note that now everything is $7 or more per point. Last year we did have 2 holdout resorts that were still in the high $6 range, that's no longer. For 2022, the annual dues price per point spans from about $7 per point to almost $12 per point. Of course, since they are scaled per point, this means the larger contract that you already own or are looking to buy means that your annual dues total will be more. For example, I have a relatively small contract, it's 90 points at Bay Lake Tower. This year my annual dues are about $615. But obviously if I had a 200 point contract or something even larger, you're talking then at least $1,200 in annual dues. Next, let's sort this by percent increase. This is comparing the 2021 annual dues amount to the 2022 annual dues amount. Here you can see that the percent increase is also a fairly wide range. There's basically almost no percent increase over at the Riviera Resort. There is some, but it's fairly immaterial, and we go all the way up to 7% at Grand Californian. This changes year to year, and of course it will vary by resort, but in general you can count on 3 or 4% increase. We can see that for this year, actually most of the resorts are under a 4% increase from last year, so that's pretty good overall. Next, let's look at the compound annual growth rate. I went over this in more detail in a prior video looking specifically at Hilton Head and Vero Beach. We'll do a brief overview here, but if you'd like a further detailed explanation, please head over to that video. I will link it in the description below as well as in the upper right hand corner now. Essentially, the compound annual growth rate is a way to find the mean annualized growth rate of some metric. This is typically used for a metric like an investment or revenue, but we can also look at the compound annual growth rate of those annual dues. The mathematical formula for this is actually pretty simple. You only really need the starting value, the ending value, or current value in our case, and then the number of years between those values. For us, these variables are the annual dues cost at the opening year, the annual dues cost now in 2022, and then the length of time between those 2 values in years. You can also use the RRI function in Excel if you don't want to type this formula out. Now, sorting by the compound annual growth rate, or CAGR, you're again seeing kind of a wide spread here, anything from just about 0.2% change from opening till now to almost 5% change. Again, this CAGR column represents that mean annualized growth. So is it 3-ish% per year over the lifetime of the contract? Has it been closer to 4.5% per year, etc.? I will note that both this metric and the percent increase are not as meaningful for newer resorts. Typically, newer resorts open with annual dues that aren't going to change too much in the early years of the resort. For example, we really haven't seen any meaningful change in Riviera Resort's annual dues, and that makes perfect sense because it's only a few years old. And particularly for the compound annual growth rate, time is a factor here, so only having a resort open for 3 years or 5 years isn't nearly as meaningful as having a resort open for 10 or 15 years, etc. Next, let's take a holistic overall look at those 2022 annual dues. Rather than sorting by one specific metric, here's the list alphabetically. Looking at just cost per point, Hilton Head, Vero Beach, and Old Key West are going to be your most expensive choices. Then the least expensive for 2022 annuals dues cost per point are Bay Lake Tower, Grand Floridian, and Saratoga Springs. Resorts with the highest percent increase compared to last year are the Grand Californian, Old Key West, and Vero Beach. Those with the lowest percent increase compared to last year are Boulder Ridge, Copper Creek, and the Riviera Resort. But remember, Copper Creek and Riviera are pretty new resorts. It is neat to see Boulder Ridge winning in this metric though, considering that's actually one of the oldest resorts. Then looking at the compound annual growth rate, so comparing opening year annual dues to 2022 annual dues, your highest compound annual growth rates are going to be at the Grand Californian, Bay Lake Tower, and Vero Beach. The lowest compound annual growth rates, at least through 2022, are Copper Creek, the Riviera Resort, and the Polynesian. Again, these are all newer DVC resorts. Now, what do you do with all of this information? If you already own a DVC contract, it just is what it is, and you pay your annual dues. If you're looking to buy into Disney Vacation Club, whether that's on the resale market or directly through Disney, this can be a metric you use to help inform your decision of which home resort you'll choose. If you plan to keep your contract through the lifetime of the contract, that is until it expires, it's almost guaranteed that your annual dues are going to cost you more than your initial purchase price. They really do add up over time. It's good to be mentally prepared for your annual dues, that way you'll know every year you'll owe some amount of money and you can financially plan for that. And although I think it's important to be aware of annual dues and factor that into your decision, ultimately I would still say at the end of the day, you should pick a home resort at the resort that you want to stay at the most. I'd of course be happy to talk about that philosophy further in the comments down below. Also, if you have any questions about annual dues or really anything Disney Vacation Club, leave those in the comments down below and I'll do my best to get you a useful answer. YouTube is typically the best way to contact me, but if you want to chat on other platforms, you'll find me on Twitter and Instagram at PixieDustPhD. I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks so much to everyone who has liked the video and subscribed to the channel. Once you're subscribed, you can ring the bell icon to receive notifications whenever I upload new videos. I truly appreciate your support of the channel and I'm so happy you're here. May the rest of your day be magical, and we'll see you real soon at Pixie Dust PhD.